Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Tundu Abiola.
And I'm OG Okpe.
With the Oscars just a few hours away, the red carpet rolled out, and it's first without a host. This year's ceremony is sure to be a memorable one. And here with the latest scoop on the Oscars is Arise correspondent Biola Alabi, joining us now live from LA. Good morning, Biola. Or evening.
Good morning, and I mean it's really morning for us because it's midnight.
It's midnight.
Wow.
Yes, it's the excitement is building. I think people are ready to go. So all the roads lead to the Oscars. Well, if they're not blocked, but all roads are leading to the Oscars. Right
With that famous LA traffic. So you're in Hollywood covering the Oscars, but we're also aware that R.Kelly, the popular R&B musician, has been charged with 10 counts of sexual abuse, and he has surrendered himself. Is this casting any shadow on the event? He's a musician, and this is an acting event.
I mean, he's a musician. Thank you for that. It's not casting much of a shadow over the events, but it is breaking news, and it is constantly. It is part of the headlines here, and it is part of the conversations people are having. I think after decades of allegations, of even cases, I think people feel that this is sort of finally coming to a head, and so it is part of that. And also, too, I mean, remember, R. Kelly has worked on many movies in the past. I mean, the famous movie and the famous song, I Believe I Can Fly. So I mean, I think with musicians, there's always some links, especially. I mean, he's worked with Lady Gaga, who also is who is nominated. So there are links and there are conversations. But I think what people are saying is the fact that he's now turned himself in. His bail has been there's a bond that has $1 million bond. He has to post a $100,000 bail, which his lawyer is actually saying that he doesn't have the money. So there's also now conversations about where is all the money and what's going on. But, you know, R. Kelly is going to continue to be part of the conversation over the next couple of months, if not years, until this case comes to its final conclusion. But I think that as much as it's Black History Month, Black celebrities are being celebrated here, but there's still this shadow over the fact that this has been a tough last couple of months for Black icons and Black stars. So when you look at the Bill Cosby case and the conclusion of that, and now you're looking at R. Kelly, and this definitely looks like this might be the end of the line for R. Kelly. So I think that as we're celebrating movies like Black Panther, Black Klansman, I think that this does cast a shadow over that, because Black people take it very personally when their icons are sort of put in these positions. And I think R. Kelly, that's where that shadow is when it comes to R. Kelly. Back to you. Thank you.
So you think that it is the end for R. Kelly, yeah?
I mean, personally, I think that years and years of allegations. I mean, as someone that has followed his story, and then also the last court case he had, and then when you look at exactly what's happening with this case, and also what led to this, which is the famous 6-part Lifetime series, which has been a big indictment not only on the authorities, but the people that have stood by that have let this happen. And I think that the mounting evidence that they have this time is really giving the Chicago prosecutor a lot more ammunition than they ever had before. And I think that people are now much more confident about coming forward and testifying. So this is I mean, if this is not the end of the line, this is going to be a very, very pretty much close to that for R. Kelly. And also, I mean, whatever happens in this case, I think that this is definitely going to be a big blot and tarnishment. I think finally people are listening to these young women that have gone through this terrible ordeal. So pretty much it's going to be tough to come back from this for him.
All right. Okay, back to the Oscars. We all know that it takes time and money to make a Hollywood blockbuster, right? We also know that there can be also a lot of controversies, right? And it took almost 12 years to bring the movie Bohemian Rhapsody to life. Why do you think that it took that long?
Well, Bohemian Rhapsody is a film that is also getting a ton of buzz here. Rami Malek has won, who is the star, and played Freddie Mercury. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor. He is the front runner for Best Actor in this film. But there are also some snubs that people feel that this film didn't get recognized in, and I think people believe that some of that is because of the controversy leading up to the film. Like you said, it took 12 years. Brian May, who is one of the band members, was also instrumental in that. I think that was instrumental in some of the delays, and I think you guys are playing a sort, so I'm gonna let the audio go down on that before I talk. All right, looks like we've got the audio fixed on that. And so with the controversy, some of it had been around creative differences. People felt that Brian May, who is a band member and one of the executive producers, really wanted to do this whitewash on the legacy and really not a true representation of Freddie Mercury and what that lifestyle was like and what his lifestyle was like, which is why the first person that was cast to play Freddie Mercury, which was Sacha Baron Cohen, actually pulled out because he felt that it wasn't the gritty type of story that he wanted to tell. And then, they had controversies. They had two different writers finish the script. Then they also had a director get fired in the middle of filming. And so this film has gone back and forth between directors, between writers and executive producers. So it is a miracle that it actually got made. And as people say, it almost bit the dust, based on their famous song, Another One Bites the Dust. So Bohemian Rhapsody, all eyes are going to be on Rami Malek. That is going to be their big take home. And of course, they're getting a lot of technical awards because it is a music film. And of course, if you haven't seen this film, the big Live Aid concert in this film is really the one big scene that people can't get enough of. And I think that's what brought this film home. But it did take 12 years to bring it to fruition. And I think that they've proven themselves in the box office, even if the critics might not have been as kind to the film or the process of making the film. Back to you, Audrey.
Well, all's well that ends well. It's a really good movie, and it's Rami Malek's time to shine. I'm also looking forward to the Queen performance at the Oscars. That's going to be a high point, I'm sure. Now, this year's documentary short nominations were very poignant, especially for Africans and Nigeria in particular. Tell us a little bit about the nominees in this category.
So I think, a lot of times with the shorts, they don't really get a lot of airtime and people don't have a lot of conversations about them. And I think with most of the shorts, you can actually watch them online. Some of them you can watch on, if you Google them, most of them you could watch because they're under 30 minutes. So they're easy to watch. But they're very interesting this year. Especially for us as Nigerians, and especially on the heels of the elections, with so many young people migrating to other parts of the world. One of the films in there is called Lifeboat, and this really highlights the refugee crisis around the world. I think a lot of times we talk about this even when we do our news coverage about how many people are being lost at sea or how many people are taking these tuk-tuk boats to cross the Mediterranean. This film really does holds back no punches. It really shows you what happens when some of these ships go wrong and they have to go and rescue people out there. And I encourage everyone to watch it. I think every leader of every developing country should watch it so that they understand what is happening to refugees when they leave their countries and migrating for better pastures. So I'm really hoping that as we go through our own transitions, that from an economical standpoint, young people don't feel the need to sort of go through these treacherous waters to get to other parts of the world. I know you guys are going to show a little bit of that, so I'll give you guys a minute.
The only way I'm gonna survive is if I become like them.
Very heart-wrenching documentary there. But let's move over to some other categories. One of my favorite category is best makeup and hairstyling.
Audrey,
Yes.
to that. Yes, before we move away from this, the second documentary you guys showed there was Black Sheep, which is really, which is a slice of life about the about a British young man who left his neighborhood at the during the. Sorry guys, it looks like there's some issues with the talkback. Maybe you guys can fix that.
Are you still?
Is it okay now, Biola?
Are you still with us?
Biola,
Yes,
can you
I
hear
think
us?
it's better now.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So after, I mean, one of the biggest things that yes, I can hear you guys now. I'm fine. The Damilola Taylor murder in the UK was a big story globally, but also in Nigeria. And after that story, so many people in the UK were trying to figure out how to keep their young boys safe. And so this family moves to the suburbs of London and then basically move into different type of violence. So they were escaping the city violence just to go into like this racially charged violence. And I think that's also, once again, poignant when we look at other films in this category, how we're living in a more racially charged world. Another film in this category is also about A Night at the Garden, which is about the Nazi support for the Nazis in New York, which once again, I think we're in a place where there has been so much conversation around white nationalists. And this is a film that people think might also be actually take the statue home. So there's so many different themes in this category. And lastly, the one thing in this category that I think people should take time to watch is a film called Endgame, which is really about the end of life, planning your end of life, and really how people die or how people live before they die. And it's really about palliative care. It's about hospices. And these are conversations that we're also having really about as we get older and as people live longer, how do people live a dignified end of life? And that's what these films are. That's what this film is about. And the last film in this category is Period End of Sentence, which is about a film about India where they're talking, where they're highlighting the issue of menstruation and periods for women in India and destigmatizing that topic, which is a big stigma apparently in India. And what was also interesting was that a couple of the voting members of the Academy actually said they weren't going to vote for this film because talking about periods is icky, which actually goes to prove the point which this film is proving, which is destigmatizing women's monthly menstrual period. So a lot of fun little back stories happening here with some of these films. And I wanted to share that with you guys before we move to the next topic. Thank you.
Well, haven't seen all of those. Which one is your favorite? Which one are you rooting for?
I mean, I have to say for me, I think the most touching one for me is End of Life, but I think that the End Game one, because I think that it's a topic people don't really talk about. But I think for me, Lifeboat would be one of the things I think that should win, because I think that the refugee crisis globally is top of mind. And I think that these forums, I mean, things like this type of documentaries really help us understand the crisis rather than when we just sort of get them in news bulletins. So this is really taking it a step further. And this was also commissioned by a news outlet. So I think that it also shows how print media is moving into commissioning films, but also films that are telling and driving home the headlines. So taking the stories beyond the headlines. And so I think Lifeboat for me would be my favorite.
All right, so let's just move over to a different category here. One of my favorite category, which is the best makeup and hairstyling. I know last year the team behind transforming Gary Oldman in The Darkest Hour into Winston Churchill took home the award for best makeup and hairstyling. Who do you think will take home this statue this year? And what are some of the biggest transformations?
Well, I mean, we were talking about this, and as you mentioned last year, Gary Oldman transformed in The Darkest Hour, and I think that, as we know, the Academy tends to reward transformations, and so I think that's why people are really saying Rami Malek is going to take home the statue in the Best Actor category, because he truly, I mean, you really believe you're watching Freddie Mercury when you're watching him. Christian Bale also was a big transformation. But what was really interesting is that the Christian Bale Vice film is nominated in that category, but Bohemian Rhapsody isn't. And so even though Rami Malek went through this big transformation, I guess for the Academy wasn't big enough. But I think that the team from Vice transforming Christian Bale to be almost 50 years older. I mean, he had to age over time as well. I think that they probably are going to take home that that award. But you know, makeup and hairstyling is something we all appreciate because we use them every day. So we'll be watching them take home the nod for that one.
In the category of costumes, there were some strong period pieces in film this year, from Mary Poppins to Mary Queen of Scots, and the costumes in Black Panther. Any sense of what might happen on Sunday night with this category?
I think that everyone is rooting for the one and only Ruth Carter, who did Black Panther. People have said that if there's one thing that, I mean, when you look at the costumes for Black Panther, and also people have said that when you look at costumes and you look at films that have really penetrated the zeitgeist and you look at what happens around Halloween, people believe that more kids dressed as characters from Black Panther this year, which to them it's a nod to the costume designer, that people actually went out there and want to look like these characters. And even when we wear anything here that has Ankara or Adire, just on the streets of Los Angeles, people come up to us and they're saying Wakanda now. So I think that this film has this in the bag. This is Ruth Carter's year. She has won all the other awards leading up to this. So I think Black Panther is taking this one home.
And not Mary Poppins?
No, Mary Poppins has not been getting the buzz that we expected coming into these award seasons. But I think Black Panther is still fresh in people's minds. People love everything about the costumes. People are literally looking forward to the next one. And I think that if anything, just Angela Bassett's hat alone is enough for her to get this. And I mean, she's been at this for a long time, so I think this is Ruth Carter's year. We'll see what happens, though. Anything can still happen.
Well, I'm rooting for Black Panther because the boys and I are no exception. We have Black Panther costumes. It's time now for a short break. When we return, our Rise News analyst and producer, Charles Ohuaku, will be joining us to review the top newspaper headlines from across the country. Thank you so much, Biola. Thank you.